Hey, what's up everybody, it's Axel, and today's video we're going to talk about the Juzear 81T. This is a hybrid IEM coming in with one dynamic driver and 8 balanced armatures. So let's see what comes in the box, and then we will talk about the sound and do our comparisons. Basically, this is the case. It's a pocketable size case, and inside you get around 6 pairs or so of silicone ear tips, and you get 2 pairs of foam ear tips along with 3.5 and 4.4 swappable terminations for the modular cable. And this is the modular cable that comes with it. It's kind of similar to the cable that comes with the 61T, if you guys remember that. Basically, it's a very nice cable. Very nice cable. No microphonics. I have no issues with it. It doesn't tangle, doesn't have any memory, it's not stiff, it stays on the desk flat. It's a really nice cable. And we have a surprise. They added a modular cable here, so you can swap up the terminations, which is something I like to see. And surprise, it's easy to remove, and when you put it, it kind of stays. It's kind of nice, so that is something. And in terms of the earpieces themselves, this is how the design looks like. They call it the Dragonfly. I think this is the wings of the dragon or something. You have the Juzear name on the left, and you have like their logo on the right. And this is going to be like a personal taste kind of thing. So this is how they look. In terms of the build, they're not really like big or chunky or anything. Kind of average, maybe slightly above average, I'm not sure. In terms of the nozzle diameter, this one is a 6.5 millimeters, so this one is on the large side. And while I personally didn't have any issues with fit and comfort, I wear large ear tips, but I have to say, like, most IEMs come in at 5.8 millimeter to 6.5, so this is on the large side of the nozzle diameter, so keep that information in mind. So as I said, in terms of fit and comfort, I have no issues. And something I want to mention is the noise isolation. Like the 61T, some people complain about the pressure issues. I think this doesn't have any pressure issues, but still the noise isolation is a bit above average compared to other IEMs. So this is, you know, it has good noise isolation. Now let's talk about the sound, and let's look at the frequency response graph. And what we see is that the 81T follows a kind of Harmonish kind of tuning. Like, it definitely has some Harman vibes going on to the sound signature. We get a neutral bass, a forward upper mid-range, and kind of an elevated treble. So this is actually not exactly Harman, it's Harman with a twist, and there's a bit of coloration, which I will talk about when we move on to describe the sound. So before I break down the sound, I just wanted to mention that I've been noticing this trend lately. I don't know if you guys noticed that we have a neutral bass with a few IEMs right now. Like, I remember we had the Cadence. The Dunu Kima 2 also has a kind of similar bass response, and we have like the Myer Audio D62, and then we have the Juzear 81T. So I'm noticing more neutral bass. I'm not sure why. Anyway, let's break it down. Let's talk about the bass. And first of all, this IEM has great sub-bass extension, definitely rumbles, and the performance itself of the bass is more of a neutral bass. In terms of the quality, this is absolutely fantastic. It has great texture and detail in the bass, and you can hear the different bass notes, and the texture itself is amazing. This is something that I think they did very well on the 81T. Another thing is that I wanted to see is I wanted to maybe increase the mid bass more, just to get that sense of slam and impact, you know, that fullness in the bass, because this bass like strikes me off as a bit neutral. And in terms of like drum kicks and stuff like that, I kind of felt it has a nice detailed textured thump, if you will. Like, I like to have a bit more mid bass, you know, when I listen to music. Speaking of the mid range, we have a very clean and clear separation between the bass and the mid range. So this kind of again adds to the element of clarity in the sound signature of the 81T. And the upper mid range is a bit more forward, so it kind of highlights a lot of the elements of the mid range in your music, bringing them to the surface. And I have to say, like, it surprised me. It doesn't sound shouty at all. It doesn't sound energetic. It doesn't sound edgy. It just sounds very forward, very clean, very clear, very detailed, with excellent separation. So basically, I think this is the start of the show of this IEM, where you're listening to anything The vocals are on the surface, you know, the instruments are on the surface, and even when I listen to some potentially aggressive music, like for example rock, metal, and all these genres, I'm surprised that it performed wonderfully. Like it didn't sound, you know, even energetic. It sounded just forward, clean, clear, and there's an element of instrument and vocal clarity that's absolutely enjoyable to listen to. Moving on to the female vocals, I think the female vocals have a certain transparency to them. They sound very airy, very lively, very extended, very clear. The element of clarity of this IM probably is the highlight after the mid-range detail. Instruments again have excellent separation, and I was listening even to some, you know, like bands like Tool, and the electric guitars are just absolutely forward, absolutely clear, just amazing, and still not close to your ear because there is good soundstage on this IM. Moving on to the treble. Now here's the thing. Now the treble quality itself is amazing. It's very, very airy, very sparkly, very shimmery, has a lot of sizzle on top, you know, very detailed, and it adds an element of coloration. But here's the thing, that it doesn't like sound a bit balanced with the rest of the frequencies, meaning that it's a bit elevated. While it's not sibilant and it's not harsh, and I'm being careful with what I say here because I tested it with a lot of tracks and it's not sibilant at all, not even harsh, but it's a bit elevated. And what I mean by elevated is that you can listen to, you know, a lot of high frequency sounds, like for example in EDM music or in rock and metal, and in cymbal crashes, hi-hats, they sound a bit elevated while not harsh, but still a bit louder than some of the vocals and the instruments that live in the mid-range. So this adds an element of coloration to, you know, the whole sound signature. While it doesn't exactly sound natural, it's a tasteful coloration that some people will like and some people will not. So this, for example, I agree, it sounds good, I agree, and it sounds very airy, and with some orchestral music, with live music, it sounds fantastic. Reminds me of the Duno SA6 Mark II, where it had that elevation in the upper treble, which gives it a lot of space, a lot of air, and it sounded wonderful. But sometimes you kind of feel that I wish it was a bit more balanced, just to, you know, sound a bit more balanced with the rest of the tonality, give it that tonal balance, which sounds more correct or natural. Again, it's not harsh, but that emphasis, you know, kind of colors the sound a bit. And this affects also some of the timbre of some instruments where they sound, you know, airy and sparkly, you know, and not exactly tonally balanced or tonally correct. In terms of the soundstage imaging and overall technicalities, this is actually a very wide-sounding IM. I would describe the soundstage as above average width, and it has some good sense of depth going on to it. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. They add some sense of depth to it. And in terms of the imaging, I would describe it again as above average. Good precision. I can localize these spatial cues with ease. So this is some of the things, good things that it has going on for it. And in terms of technicalities, this is a very detailed IM. Very detailed, actually, very resolving with a lot of good clarity. I would put it like on my technical scale. I would say this is 60% between the Truthear Nova, which I have here, and the Pilgrim. So it lands, you know, 60% between the Nova and the Pilgrim, which is already, you know, a very good resolution. This is a detailed IM, and the instrument separation is fantastic. So overall, you're getting the sound signature that I would describe with one word, which is clarity. You get a lot of vocal and instrument clarity, you get a lot of air, you know, a lot of sparkle, and the bass exactly is not overwhelming any of the other frequencies. So this, again, the separation between the mids and the bass adds more to that element of clarity, and the air region again pushes that clarity way more. So this is an IM that I would describe as clear and clean. This is how I'll describe the sound of the 81T. Now let's start with our comparison, and I will start the first comparison with the previous Juzear Butterfly 61T. The 61T, I like the bass there a lot. It just has the amount that's so satisfying and full. There's some bass bleed that added some warmth and fullness to the mid-range, but you know, it had a warm sound. It had a very good bass, but here we get an emphasis on the mid-range and the treble, so it sounds a bit more airy with a neutral bass. So different sounds, completely different sound signatures. I like the vocals more, the mid-range more on the 81T, and in terms of detail and separation, the the 81T is a step above the 61T. Both of them have great soundstage, both of them have great imaging, which is great, but both of them have different sounds completely. I like the bass of the 61T a lot. Like, it's very, very impactful. Like, I would describe the 61T as a punchy bass with a good slam. Whereas here we get, you know, a very clean separation between the bass and the mids to allow the vocals to shine and pop and come through. So they are for different people. If you like bass, if you like fullness, a slightly warm sound, controlled treble, I would say go with the 61T. Still has a lot of good detail, but if you like the vocals, the instruments, the mid-range and the air and the sparkle more with the neutral bass, I would say go with the 81T. And then I want to bring to the comparison here this Nova. Man, I love the Nova. Like, I think they look fantastic and they sound amazing. Basically, the 81T is kind of similar sounding in some ways, but I would say it's more like a Nova with a twist. It adds the air and the sparkle up top, so still it adds a bit of coloration with that elevated treble that adds an element of air and space. Bass quality, I would give it to the 81T. Mid-range detail, I would give it to the 81T. Overall resolution and separation, I would give it to the 81T. Soundstage and imaging, I would give it to the 81T. The treble, I think on the Nova is a bit more balanced, so it sounds more natural, but not as detailed as the 81T. Doesn't have that sparkle, but I think both of them are great IEMs. Basically, the 81T is a more detailed Nova with a bit of a sparkle and more air and treble extension up top. So there you go. Now let's move on to the D62. Basically, both of these IEMs on paper, they kind of look similar. All right, the graph looks similar, but listening to them, differences are night and day. Night and day. Let's start with the bass. The bass of the D62 is actually nice. It has an element of depth. I feel it as a deep bass, you know, it's a strong deep bass. Still neutral, but the 81T adds an element of sub-bass extension and more detail and resolution in the different bass notes. Basically, the texture is better and higher quality on the 81T, but both of them are neutral-ish in the type of bass. But when it comes to the mid-range, if you guys watch my review of the D62, I felt it came across as a bit energetic at times, and it didn't play well with some tracks and some genres of music that maybe have a bit more energy or aggressiveness to the music, to the sound. Whereas I have zero issues in terms of that with the 81T. I think the 81T sounds phenomenal. The mid-range is forward, but not once did it sound edgy or energetic or anything like that. Actually, it's wonderful and I enjoyed it so much. And in terms of the treble, again, I have to give it to the 81T. It's still elevated, but still sounded natural to me. Like, if you listen to high frequency sounds in isolation, it sounds fantastic. Just when I compare it in the rest of the music, I just find that the treble sounds elevated, but still it had a natural quality to it. I'm talking here relatively speaking, like comparing them. The treble of the D62 is completely fine, but after hearing the 81T, it just comes across as much better, higher quality. You know, it has that more detail in it. Sounds natural to me, not forced, not pushed, just even relaxed in a way, because it doesn't go into that sibilant or harsh territory. It's just, you can feel even you raise the volume, it's completely okay. So treble quality and distinct character, I would give it to the 81T. And when it comes to detail and separation, I would give it to the 81T. And I can listen to any genre of music with the 81T. I had no issues. Rock and metal, absolutely wonderful. Another thing is the soundstage and imaging, where I described the D62 as average in that regard. You know, it's not bad, but it's average. Whereas here you get wide soundstage, you get good depth, and the imaging is actually great. So someone will ask, okay, Axel, what does the D62 do better in your opinion? I would say maybe the nozzle size is smaller. That's what it does better. Quickly now, the PULA Anvil, the bone conduction driver. Both of these are fantastic, and I enjoyed both of them. I have to say that both of them sounded great to me, and I enjoyed listening to both. But I have to say, for my personal enjoyment, I kind of like the PULA Anvil 114 more. I just got more enjoyment out of it. The bass is there, adding the fullness, adding the strong sense of impact, adding the sense of, you know, fuller body presentation to the mid-range. And maybe it's not as forward as the 81T in terms of the mid-range, but, you know, it kind of like compensates by adding a bone conduction that adds a rich element of rich texture to the vocals and instrument that sounds natural and realistic. And the treble is, again, more balanced with the rest of the tonality, and the sense of stage and space and imaging is absolutely one of, like, this one has good width and good depth, but this one It's kind of immersive, and I would describe this as the imaging is like actually you can pinpoint things in the sound field that surrounds you more than just a width and depth that you get with the H1T. So for me, I would take the PULA Anvil 114, and then the last comparison is the king. This is the king right here. This one is just one of those IEMs that's just a fantastic all-rounder, man. This one does everything right. Does everything right. Nothing is missing, nothing is lacking, nothing. I wouldn't say anything. Look at them. Let's compare them. Basically, the Performance 7 gives you greater sub-bass extension, a more powerful, punchier bass, slam, and impact, you know, fuller sounding bass. The mid-range is tastefully done as well. While I enjoy the forwardness of the H1T, but still, I would say it's still the Performance 7. The mid-range is highlighted enough because of the excellent instrument separation to stand out from the music. And when it comes to the treble, it's just way smoother while still being incisive enough to add an element of detail and incisive definition, that distinct character, you know, where each note begins and ends. You can hear that very well. That planar gives it the fast transients. So no need to elevate the treble because you're already getting everything, but it's more balanced with the sound signature. Even the detail, you know, and separation, I would say it's a bit better on the Performance 7 compared to the H1T. And even something like the fit, the contoured earpiece, the smaller nozzle size, which is going to potentially make it more comfortable for many people. For me, this is a no-brainer. Like, I personally enjoy the Performance 7 much more. I think this is probably the best IM for me at around this price range right now. If I have to rank these, because these are 4 new IMs, I would put the Performance 7 on top. This is a king right there. This is the king on his throne. The PULA Anvil, you know, it's very enjoyable. In terms of enjoyment, I enjoyed it a lot, and it's trying to go there, but I feel just the Performance 7 is more balanced, more complete, and it does a few things better compared to the PULA, so I will put the PULA here. And this is a ranking just based on my personal enjoyment. I would then add the Juzear 81T after that, and finally I would add the D62 at the bottom. This is how I would rank them in terms of personal enjoyment. In terms of who do I recommend this IM to, I recommend this to people who like a Harman sound signature, kind of like Harman. It's not exactly Harman. People who like the Harman sound signature, people who like an element of air and sparkle up top, because I know many people will enjoy that. It's a coloration, but it's a tasteful coloration that probably many people will enjoy, and I enjoyed it a lot. People who like neutral bass, people who like clarity, because this is the word I would use to describe the Juzear 81T. It's clarity. That's the word I would use. It definitely puts the bass in a level that allows the mid-range to come and pop and shine, and the treble adds the element of air. So it's a very clear and clean and crisp even sound signature. People who like detail, people who like separation, people who like good soundstage width and depth, I recommend the H1T. Who I don't recommend this to, obviously people who don't like Harman tuned bass and mid-range, at least, you know, people who don't like that, you're not going to enjoy this one. People who are like more bass than the H1T, if you know yourself. I actually like a bit more bass, although I enjoyed this one, but I wish it had a bit more bass. People who are bass heads, people who enjoyed a bit more relaxed mid-range. Again, it didn't come across ever as energetic or shouty, but for some people, they like that area to be a bit more relaxed. People who like something like the meta tuning in terms of the mid-range, and people who are treble sensitive, I recommend it. Although the treble here didn't come across as harsh or anything, but maybe for people who are treble sensitive, you might want to watch out for this one, because the treble is elevated. Maybe it will not sound harsh to you, but it's elevated and it colors the sound in a way. So for all these factors combined, I would give the Juzear 81T a rating of 4 stars out of 5. I kind of wish the bass was a bit more, just to give it a bit more of an impact and slam and fun factor. And I kind of wish the treble was a bit toned down a bit, not because it's harsh, but just because it could make it, when it's lowered down a bit, could make it sound a bit more natural sounding, you know? The timbre of the instruments, the overall tonal balance would sound a bit more natural. But some people like that air in their music, they like that coloration, and I think this will fit them just fine. And that's it, guys. That concludes our review of the Juzear 81T. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. If you have any question, leave it down below and I'll get back to you. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and until then, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.